Every day we draw closer to New York's primary, and we are trying to profile as many candidates on the docket as possible. Joining us once again, candidate in New York's 13th district, James Felton. Keith, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you on. I think it's been a few months since we last spoke, and especially since the presidential primary has at least for right now basically wrapped up. There's a lot of renewed interest in congressional and Senate races, and so I'm assuming there's probably a lot of people that are watching this who might not have been around to see your last interview on the show. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience, tell us a little bit about what led to this run. I'd love that.
Sure. So hello to everybody. My name is James and Felton and Keith. Most people here in Harlem or uptown Manhattan call me JFK for short. But you can call me James. I'm running for U.S. Congress in New York's 13th district. The name of my platform is We Owe Us. It's a platform of what we like to call radical inclusion or radical inclusionism. It is rooted in universal health care for all, a universal basic income, universal series of education subsidies and infrastructure investments like the Green New Deal and criminal justice reform, just to name our sort of top five. But we're having fun so far. Now that the economy is starting to open back up and we're starting to get back outside, we're getting back to meeting people in the community. So that's been a big shift.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you about the actual mechanics of campaigning with the way things are. But first on the platform, I mean, many of the issues that you just talked about, we have been rocked by emergency level, crises. And so I'm wondering, have like the pandemic, the newfound national focus on reforming the police, have these provided, I have to assume they've provided opportunities for you to contrast yourself with the current incumbent?
Sure. I mean, even like this picture behind me was, this is 1,000 people that we had in the streets in Harlem, and we walked everyone to the Upper East Side, which for the non-New Yorkers is a very affluent, white part of Manhattan, just to show who we were, the people that we were as we marched through these streets. And to our surprise, so many of them poured out from their homes into the streets. I think the main thing that the COVID-19 pandemic coupled with the police violence that we've seen has done is it has, number one, showed our interconnected humanity and how we only get to thrive socially or economically based on the bumping up against each other that would normally go on. But it also sort of shined a really interesting light on the very real injustices that have always existed since this country has started. So to my surprise, even, it's been a real boost to the campaign and to the conversation about the issues, the conversation that people usually claim that they are exhausted from having. I think there's a renewed energy in America right now where we realize these are the conversations that we have to consistently have. Exactly. So that's been an opportunity, but it's been unfortunate in how we got there for sure. Yeah.
And also, I mean, so you're marching with 1,000 people. These are people who are having to balance keeping themselves and others safe responsibly, and being, just from the photo, you can see they're being far more responsible than some of the scenes we've seen playing out. There's footage from Vegas we were just talking about yesterday. With wanting to push for their rights, exercise their constitutional rights, while being pitched by national media as wild, lawless bandits, effectively, or operatives of Antifa or something like that. I can only assume that must be quite frustrating.
I actually had a close friend of mine who I used to work with in insurance call me and ask about the Antifa thing. He's a well-meaning, good guy, white guy from New Jersey, close friend again. And I had explained to them that, number one, that's not a thing. But with regards to the contrast of regular cities versus Las Vegas, I think is also exposing this very interesting paradox of freedom in America and what that means and for who gets it. There is this jockeying that we have here that's really not allowed in other places like, China, et cetera. And I think, we should be available to have the conversation, the very messy, dirty conversation about who gets to protest for their rights and how. It was 85 degrees when we were marching last Thursday, and I wanted to take my mask off. And there were times that I had it off. But yeah, a lot of the people in the picture, they have their masks on. But, you know, the interesting thing about this time, again, is that we have to have the messy conversation about how we exist as humans that I feel like we've been avoiding for this whole century. I think the 21st century and the post-dot-com era has been a lot about trying to mechanically automate our way out of the messy conversations that we have to have about how we coexist in the melting pot that is America. And we don't get to hide from it anymore. I think that's a good thing.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.